everyone. My alternate reading presentation is on Apollonius of Tyre. If you want to follow along with your Old and Middle English textbook, the page is 275. A little context about the prose work. The most interesting fact about this prose piece is that it is actually the earliest surviving Romance literature in English, copied from an Old English exemplar into the mid-11th century English manuscript, Cambridge Corpus Christi College 201. The manuscript is actually really famous for its association with the Archbishop Wulfstan. The manuscript is filled with Homilaic and legal text with the exception of Apollonius of Tyre. Melanie Hayworth writes about Apollonius of Tyre and its manuscript context, who explains that Apollonius was most likely added into the manuscript for its exemplary / Homilaic romance, or because of its promotion of wisdom and cultural ideal, meaning even if the prose work is considered an adventure romance, where it has the quest of the hero, the love interest, the loyalty, exile and return, disguise, etc., it still has Christian morals that the audience can learn from, such as educating them on the forms of wisdom and Christian religion. Apollonius of Tyre is based on the Latin legend of Apollonius Registri. I really hope I didn't butcher that, which paved the way for Shakespeare's inspiration for Hercules. There are no direct sources for the Old English version, but there have been various renditions from Latin. Golden edits Latin edition to create a comparative translation to the Old English translation. The textbook declares that the similarity between the Old English and its scholarly text is the reason for scholarly neglect. Reinder's a reappraiser of the differences between Old English and Latin texts explains how contemporary English and cultural expectations have been proven to be added by the translator. Again, Hayworth denotes this by referencing back to Reindeer, to saying that the Old English translator manipulated the female character Aristide to fit the idealized pattern of Anglo-Saxon womanhood. So basically, another author who also denotes this is Tyler, who says that in a period where the church was exerting a greater control of the institution of marriage, Apollonius, where its faithful marriages and sexual contingents is well suited for use to exemplary text by Wulfstan. So again, going back to his Christian morals. So starting with Apollonius of Tyre on page 277, Antiochus, the king of Antioch, had a beautiful daughter whom was of marriageable age. The king thought that only those of highest status and those with the greatest power should be given to his daughter, but then when he started to thinking like this, he began to think of her in an incestuous manner. So he basically broke into her bedchambers and shushed away the servants in the pretense that he was going to have a private conversation with his daughter, but he in fact forcefully raped her. After the crime had been done, the servant came in and asked the daughter, what happened, and she explained that she had been raped. The king wanted to keep appearances that he was a loving father, but he still continued this disgusting relationship with her. But in order to avoid suspicion of the people, he placed a riddle which all suitors must answer for his daughter's hand, but regardless of if they were correct or not, the suitor was met with death. Apollonius decided that he wanted to solve this riddle, so once the key had arrived, the king asked him the riddle, which is, I suffer wickedness, I enjoy the flesh of the mother, I seek my father, the husband of my mother, the daughter of my wife, and cannot find them, in which Apollonius basically called him out by saying that the king was incestually involved with his daughter. The king was immediately fearful that rumors would spread the truth, so he lied and said that Apollonius was wrong, and they had 30 days to interpret the riddle correctly or die. So Apollonius left, and the king ordered his servant Philoclus to trail after him and kill Apollonius, but Apollonius was already back home and knew that the king was lying, so he sailed off with a shipment of wheat, gold, and silver and disappeared into the night. The citizens of Tyre mourned over the loss. They thought that Apollonius was dead, so when Philoclus arrived to Tyre ready to execute Apollonius, but seeing that he was gone, he returned to the king and told him, the dude's gone. And so the king made a decree saying anyone who returned Apollonius back to him dead or alive shall receive a reward. So the king prepared a ship to hunt him down, but Apollonius was already at Tarsus. So then he met Helennicus, who warned him that the king's decree and told him to run away. But Apollonius was like, you know what? No, thank you for warning me, but just take the reward for yourself. Just say that you killed me. So right after he left Hellenicus, he met another man named Strangulio. Apollonius basically explains his situation to Strangulio, and Strangulio tells, my city's too poor to support someone like you. But Apollonius says, you know what, I'll give you all my riches if you just conceal my identity. So he ended their famine by giving them the wheat. And then Apollonius cast off his nobility and became a humble merchant. And the people were so happy with what he'd done for the city, they made a bronze statue of him. After a few months, Strangulio urged Apollonius that he should travel to Pentapolis and hide there. But once Apollonius had left, the sea basically took everything he owned and destroyed the ship that he was sailing on. So Apollonius had swam to Pentapolis and basically cursed Neptune for being so greedy when an old fisherman came by and took pity on him and gifted him with stuff and told him, you know what, take this clothes that I can give you and just go into the city and see someone who will pity you. So in the city, Apollonius noticed that there was a game going on in the bathhouse, so he decided to go. And he noticed that the king of Panopolis was there. So King Aristras basically decided that Apollonius was his equal in the match, and basically they became best friends in the bathhouse. So the king dressed Apollonius up and took him to his castle and told them, you know what, eat. And Apollonius felt bad because he saw the king's wealth and really missed it, so he was really sorrowful. And at this time the daughter appeared and she was like, what's with this man? Why is he so sad? And so Apollonius told his story, and the daughter began crying, and she was like, I want to give him wealth, I want to make him happy. So she began playing the harp for him, but Apollonius was like, you're good, but you could be better. And so he played for her, and she was so stricken in love with them that she gave him even more wealth. And at the end of the feast, when he was about to leave, she begged her father to let him stay. So while he was residing in the castle, she could not sleep. She was so restless that she went to her father's bedroom and she was like, we have to do everything we can to keep him. So her dad was like, you know what, alright. So he made a deal with Apollonius and told him, if you teach my daughter everything you know, I'll replace everything you lost. So naturally Apollonius agreed, and so they went out in the city streets. When they were approached by 3 noblemen, the nobleman was like, I want your daughter's hand in marriage. To the queen said, okay, write your names and tell my daughter what you want, and then she can choose for herself. And Apollonius had to deliver the letters to his student for her to decide. So when she got the letters, she was really sad because she didn't see the name that she wanted to see. So she basically asked Apollonius, hey, are you offended by any way by what I'm going to get married? And Apollonius was like, no, as long as you're happy. And so she writes back a letter and it basically says that she fell in love with this shipwrecked man. So the king, when he receives the letter, he's like, who is the shipwrecked man? And no one gets the answer. And so the king gives the letter to Apollonius and tells the king, maybe you'll know it since you're a scholar. And Apollonius' toes beat red because he knows that it's him. So the king took Apollonius home, and he was happy because he actually really liked Apollonius and basically gave him a blessing. And so they married, but at this point the script actually, in the original manuscript, it's actually lost, but it still makes sense even if it isn't in there. So basically what had happened is that King Antiochus, the one who was having such a relationship with his daughter, had died, and apparently Apollonius had succeeded his kingdom, so he sails off to take it back, but his wife, at this point, she dies while giving birth prematurely, and so due to the superstitions of the sailors, he puts her in a chest box and casts her off board. So her name is as straight Street, and basically she washes up in this place where Diana's temple, so she becomes the priestess there. And so Apollonius lands in Tarsus once again, but he leaves his daughter Thaisa basically into his old companions Diosthenes and Strangulio. But fast forward a few later, Dionysus basically orders their servant to kill her because she's more attractive than her own daughter. So right before the servant can kill her, Thaisa says a moment of prayer before, but she is at this moment snatched up by pirates and sold to a brothel. And ironically enough, at this time, Apollonius ends up hearing at the brothel because he's seeking comfort because apparently his daughter has died. But Thaisa herself shows up. They are reunited, and she explains to him that she has managed to keep her virginity and that she's actually married to a prince. So, relieved that their family is united, they travel to the temple of Diana to seek the priestess. Again, the priestess is his wife, but at this point they don't know. So, when she comes down to the family, they throw Apollonius and the daughter and the son-in-law basically throw themselves at her feet, thinking that she is the actual goddess. The priestess rose and embraced him dearly because she has heard his story, but Apollonius didn't know that she was his wife, so he kind of shook free from her, and she cried out that she was his wife and that she wanted to see her daughter. So Apollonius, tells her, Thaisa, come here. So they all embrace and they rejoice. So word spread quickly that they were once again reunited, and they had a great feast and a huge party. So basically, Apollonius established Thaisa's husband, Athenagoras, as king of Tyre before he left to seek revenge on those who had wronged his family. So he commanded that Strangulio and Dionysus be captured and brought before him. Thaisa stepped up and basically told the servant to come back and confirm that they had been plotting to kill her. And so once they confirmed that, basically Dionysus and Strangler were taken by the citizens and they were stoned to death. While the person who was supposed to kill Thaisa was pardoned because they gave her time to pray, and so she survived. Later on, the wife's dad, the wife's father, actually joined the reunion months later, and he was rejoiced to see Apollonius and his daughter together. The king then died a year later and was happy and surrounded by all those he loved, and he left his kingdom to Apollonius. And after all of this, Apollonius, as being the king of a lot of territory at this point, was walking by the beach when he noticed the old fisherman and ordered his soldier to take him to the royal hall. And basically, he repaid his gratitude to the old fisherman by giving him 200 gold and keeping out of his servant. And Hellanicus was also repaid for his service of warning Apollonius. So now that all had been restored, Apollonius had a son and made him king of his grandfather's land. And basically, Apollonius just lived a happy life with his wife. My works cited. If you have any questions, please comment down below or email me. And thank you for listening.